September is Suicide Prevention Month. Joining us is a representative from the Traumatic Loss Coalition to talk about their important work to educate the community on suicide prevention. It's so here on this week's Latino Motion. Join us.
Choose quality, value, distinction. Choose Stockton.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation, and Stockton University. This edition of Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is brought to you by the HD Studios at the campus of Stockton University. Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas. Welcome to Latino Motion, a weekly interview show highlighting issues impacting New Jersey's Latino community while advancing understanding of Latino cultural heritage and contributions to our society. And here is your host, Bert Lopez.
Buenos dias and welcome to Latino Motion. Cumberland County is teaming up with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. To talk more about this and the work of the Traumatic Loss Coalition is Alvira Smith. She is the Cumberland County Coalition Coordinator. Alvira, welcome to Latino Motion. And I know that you have a busy month because I understand that September is Suicide Prevention Month, and that's a big part of the work of the coalition. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing here in Cumberland County for the very first time.
For the first time in Cumberland County, we're hosting a walk to fight suicide and to bring suicide awareness to the county. The walk is called the Out of Darkness Community Walks, and we're hosting that as a part of our connections with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Now let's talk a little bit about the coalition, because
Yes.
the coalition is with Rutgers University, and it is the Rutgers University Behavioral Health Care Division, and you're part of that Traumatic Loss Coalition, which apparently there's one in every county.
That's correct. We have a coordinator in every county, and kind of what our mission is to bring suicide awareness and prevention, as well as to bring technical assistance and support to the schools, as well as any other agencies like law enforcement and others that work with youth, so that if there is a traumatic loss within the county, we would be available to assist them. To do that, we actually have what's called a lead response team.
Oh, yes.
A lead response team.
Actually, I know that we've had that in the county, in Atlantic
Right,
County a
right.
couple of times, because when we've had, for example, one of the high schools where a youth
Yes.
was killed in a car accident.
Correct.
And that is a very traumatic for those kids attending the school that were classmates and everything. So it is very traumatic for everyone involved, including the administrators and everybody involved. So what do you do? I mean, you go into the school, you kind of had counseling sessions you do that as a group, or you do it with individuals?
We do it either way. We work in conjunction with the schools. A lot of times the schools have their own crisis teams, and we are available to provide consultation to them to ensure that they're using evidence-based practices and that they're going about the procedures and protocols that we would like to see happen. The other thing that we do is that throughout the school year, we offer coalition meetings. And we bring together various stakeholders, including different treatment providers in the area for mental health and substance abuse, law enforcement, the clergy, and definitely the school personnel are heavily involved. And what we do is disseminate information on suicide prevention, trauma response, and mental health issues. And as a part of that coalition meeting, we usually offer some form of training. And then the second piece that we do is that we also develop a lead response team within the coalition within our county. And the lead response team is comprised of individuals who work in some of those agencies or work in the schools. They're counselors and mental health professionals. And we have training that we receive in the best practices for responding to traumatic responses.
Well, obviously, the whole idea is to try to prevent suicide. They do
Yes.
happen, and just some of the statistics. I understand that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death for Americans, and actually, it's a bigger impact on the
youth.
younger adults. Tell me what the range is in terms of the
For the
the youth.
Yes. The highest rates of suicide are with youth in the ages of 15 to 22. I'm sorry, 24, which is the young adults. They have the highest rates. And we know it's the second leading cause of death.
Among that age group.
Yes, yes. And since we know that suicide is preventable, that since this is such a big national public health issue, it can be prevented. If we can link that person to treatment and services, there's a life saved. And that's what our ultimate goal is we would like to save lives.
Now, a lot of the issues around suicide do involve behavioral health or behavioral
Yes.
health issues, mental health issues. What do you do to bring awareness in terms of the behavioral health issues that people should be worried about?
Right. What we do is the schools are required to have training on being able to detect mental health symptoms. And so that kind of awareness of mental health and mental illness is something that we like to bring to the community. I know law enforcement gets training, we have clergy who receive training, and it's all about learning to detect. We don't expect the lay people or people in the community to be able to diagnose, but just to be aware of what kinds of things to look for. And if they notice those things, how to draw that individual into a conversation about their feelings and what is happening, and then hopefully suggest some sort of help. Whether they call a crisis hotline or call a practitioner or their doctor, but what to do in those situations.
Every time you see something traumatic happen in one of the schools, after this an analysis that often shows that there have been signs. They've just been totally ignored. So training is one thing, but how do you get folks to really act upon it? And sometimes you don't want to overreact when you see something. Right. But what advice do you give those teachers and those guidance counselors and the clergy as to when they should take action?
Well, I would say that the first thing that they need to do is to engage that person in a non-judgmental way and have a conversation with them. And never be afraid to ask, have you been thinking about ending your life? Have you been thinking about suicide? Just being very direct about it. If you sense that the individual has had a number of losses, you see some changes in their personality, the way that they've been acting, that they seem to be more depressed, these are the basic warning signs. If you see those things happening, to ask the person, and in a caring way. And if the person says, yes, I've had some thoughts, then that's when you need to figure out how are you going to help that person.
Yeah, we want to
we'll get to that
explore a little more in terms of what are the warning signs and the risk factors, and also talk about the walk itself. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
La Cumbre de Liderazgo Hispano de Nueva Jersey les invita a su 5º aniversario, donde habrá más de 8 talleres educativos, presentaciones culturales y mesas de exhibiciones para el crecimiento de los hispanos en la región. Todos los años entregan becas a estudiantes y reconocen los líderes de la comunidad. Comienza a las 8 de la mañana y cierra con broche de oro con una gran gala. Para inscribirte, visita la página web en pantalla. Los esperamos el 24 de octubre en la Universidad de Rowan, Glassboro, New Jersey.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion, where we'll continue our discussion with Avira Smith. She is the coordinator for the Traumatic Loss Coalition and the coordinator for Cumberland County. Avira, we were talking about something that happens way too often, and that's suicide. And particularly, you have seen a bit of a rise of suicide taking place in Cumberland County. Obviously, this impacts everyone. But do you have any ideas what the reasons for the big increase?
That question has been raised many times, and we're not really sure at this point why that is happening. We're thinking that maybe because of the economic problems that happened several years back, that's when we started noticing that there's been more losses by suicide.
Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the risk factors and what the signs are. We kind of started going that route earlier in our discussion. So let's just talk about the warning signs. And I know that we talked about three things, or at least there are three things that we looked at, and we could go into each one of them. One is what is said, the talk. The other one being the behavior, and also the third one being the mood. So let's break that down. What should we look at when we hear someone talking?
Okay, kind of what happens is that person's thinking changes. It sort of goes in more of a negative direction.
Okay.
They kind of seem to view the world more pessimistically. So they'll say things like, I'm not worth living, I don't have any reason to live, my problems are so terrible, I'll never be able to solve them. So it's very negativistic, their thinking. And that's, one of the signs. If you notice that a person who previously might have been more positive in their thinking, now all of a sudden seems to be, heading towards a negative kind of way of thinking.
And that's the important thing, that there's a shift, right? Because some people just happen to be negative.
Right, we have individuals like that too, but that's kind of not the same thing.
Let's talk about the behavior. What kind of behaviors should we be looking at?
Individuals who seem to no longer care about what's happening to them or the world around them will engage in more risky kinds of behaviors. They may drive fast, they may drink more, they may smoke more, they engage all kinds of negative behaviors. They may drive their motorcycle 100 miles down the road. They may take more chances in life. Like for an adult, they may start gambling more, engaging in all kinds of negative things.
And for the mood, what kind of moods are we looking at?
The mood, again, would change more in a downward direction. The individual would report feeling sad or depressed. We may notice that they're just flat, and there's like no change in mood, like nothing makes them happy, nothing seems to satisfy them. All of their normal activities that they would engage in don't seem to give them pleasure anymore. And so because of that, they start isolating and removing themselves from their normal connections and activities.
We also have risk factors. Obviously, there's some risk factors, and I had three here that we want to discuss.
Okay.
One being the health factors, the second being environmental factors, and something that I didn't think was a factor is there's historical factors or his family history. So let's talk about the health factors. What kind of health factors are contributing to suicide?
Right. In 90% of the situations where an individual attempts suicide or actually complete suicide, there is a mental health issue involved. And 90% of the times it is a depression, so a history of depression. And it could also be a bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder. In youth, we may see it in the individuals with conduct disorders and individuals with anxiety disorders. So individuals that have any of those kinds of issues are at a higher risk for attempting suicide.
And what are some of the environmental factors?
The environmental factors are if the person has exposure to individuals who attempt suicide or have actually died by suicide. It's actually an access to lethal means, such as having a gun available in your home,
Wow.
which we know is very high in Cumberland County. We actually have the highest rates of individuals possessing firearms. And I attribute that to the fact that we have so many of the prisons within our county. So it's access to means.
And one of the things that I then think come into play, a family history. Tell me a little bit about that and how that's a contributing factor.
If you are from a family that has a family member who has attempted or who have actually died by suicide, that places those family members at risk for also attempting or death by suicide. So that in itself is a risk factor.
And I understand that child abuse and
Yes.
another, how they were raised could also contributing factor as well.
Those are other environmental factors, yes. Any
So-
kind of stress, stressors in life, and losses. It's really one of the big major things that happens is, I always call it, that's the icing on the cake. It's the last thing that pushes the person over to make that decision to end their life, is they have some kind of loss. It can be a loss of employment, it can be an arrest, it could be a death, and so on. So it's a loss.
And that's very critical. I know that personally I experienced that situation with a member in church whose grandmother passed away, and actually after the funeral, shortly after the funeral, the youth committed suicide. So it was the loss
Yes.
that was the additional trigger, so to speak.
Right.
To push that person over the edge. So we want to talk a little bit more in depth about the walk and what we as parents should be looking at. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion. Before we continue with our guests, I just wanted to remind you that the Hispanic Choice Awards are coming up on October the 3rd. And let's listen in to Nadia Rivera. She is with the Hispanic Choice Awards to tell us a little more about that event.
First, thank you for having us on the show. The Hispanic Choice Awards is very proud to support Latino Motion. And so the Hispanic Choice Awards is an event that has been going on for over 10 years. Javier Suarez is our executive producer, along with Cecilia Ramirez. And I'm part of the communications team for the Hispanic Choice Awards. And it's a 3-part event. So its mission is really to just celebrate Latinos in the fields of the arts, the education, business, really just Latinos who are out there doing great work, community advocates, activists.
Let's break down those 3 events because I know that the event starts around 4,
The event
6.
starts at 4
At 4
on
o'clock.
Saturday, October 3rd.
So, and then the actual show doesn't start to 8, but there's a lot of things in between. So it's a great, enjoyable program. Tell me a little bit about what the cost, because this is really affordable for anyone who would like to go out and be part of a Hispanic cultural heritage and really participate in this elegant event.
Yes, the cost to attend the Hispanic Choice Awards, we really like to call it, we'd like to invite you to register to the Hispanic Choice Awards versus purchasing tickets, because it really is such a rewarding thing to do to attend the Hispanic Choice Awards. The cost is $13 for the general public. To be part of the 3-part event, it's $55, and you can learn how to register to attend at www.hcaphilly.org.
I hope you join us for that Hispanic Choice Awards and also the Hispanic Leadership Summit later on in the month. We're going to continue our discussion with Avera Smith, and Avera, we were talking about an event that's taking place in Cumberland County for the very first time, and that is the Walk to Fight Suicide, and it's titled Out of the Darkness Community Walk. Tell us a little bit about that event.
Okay, it's a walk that we're going to be holding on October 18th. It's a Sunday. Registration is from 9 to 10, with the opening ceremonies around 9:30 to about 10, and then the walk is actually from 10 to 12. We are holding it at the Cumberland County Fairgrounds, which is on Carmel Road, Cumberland County.
Well,
It's actually in Millville.
Millville.
City
yes,
of Millville.
It's the city of Millville. We do have we'll put up on the screen, there is a website, so people could register.
Yes.
They want to participate.
Yes.
So you could just walk to bring awareness. Either you've had a loss in the family due to suicide, to encourage others and make them aware of this real danger. And also you could donate, all right,
Yes.
contribute to the cost. And what is the money used for?
The money that we're raising is for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And they're one of the leading foundations that raises funds for suicide prevention. What they do is they give the money for research as well as educational programs, and they bring back to the community the same prevention programs that they have developed and that they use to make the community aware of suicide.
So this is a good activity to get schools involved, to
Yes.
get different organizations to come out and support, and we certainly encourage folks to come out and
Yes.
participate. So look forward to that event. Let's talk a little bit about what we left off in the previous segment
Okay.
about the message that we should give to parents, what they should look at. We talked about the risk factors. We
Yes.
talked about some of the signs that they should be looking at. But what's the key message that you want to convey to parents?
That parents need to be aware of their youth and kind of how they're feeling and how they're thinking, and to be open and talk to them. And if they see any changes or in their moods or their behaviors, to talk about those things in an open and honest way, and to ask those important questions. And if they hear some of that negative thinking we talked about, or if they even mention, I feel like killing myself, to take it serious and to seek assistance.
Take it serious. That certainly is a key. Now, there's a couple numbers.
Yes.
Let's start with the number that is for the local coalition. That it's a hotline number that people could call.
Right, it's the crisis hotline.
Okay.
Every county has what's called a screening center, and that's their hotline. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they have professionals who answer that phone. For Cumberland County, it's 856-455-5555. If you're from another county, please feel free to call them and ask them what the number is to your local crisis center.
And there's also a national
Yes.
number as well, and we'll put that one up on the screen. So certainly from anywhere in the U.S., you could still call that national number and get information. Now, you don't have to be in immediate crisis, but if you see the signs, it's still okay to call to get advice.
To get advice and to actually have them talk to the individual to see where they are and if potentially they may be at risk. And then that determination can be made right over the phone. They actually do a screening.
Well, thank you for sharing this information. Obviously, it's not a subject that we like to talk about, but it's certainly important, particularly when we're seeing this happening in our community. Thank you for taking the time to join us here on Latino Motion, and thank you for joining us at home once again here on Latino Motion.
Choose quality, value, distinction. Choose Stockton.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.